I don't need an applause. The mayor will need an applause. Good to see everyone. This is going to be interesting. This is going to be fascinating, especially at this time where we are in San Francisco. Welcome to the newly merged Commonwealth Club World Affairs. I'm Raj Mathai, the lead anchor for NBC Bay Area News. Let me tell you a few things about Mayor Breed before she comes out to the stage. She is truly all San Francisco, born and raised in the great city of San Francisco. In 2018, she was elected San Francisco's 45th mayor and became the first African-American woman mayor in the city's history. Previously, Mayor Breed served as a member and president of the city's Board of Supervisors. Today, we're going to hear about the challenges and the opportunities facing San Francisco with regards to health and public safety, economic recovery, revitalization, housing, homelessness, and climate change. We really could be here for 3 hours talking about what we need to talk about. So please, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage and welcome back to the Commonwealth Club, the Mayor of San Francisco, London Breed.
Thanks, Raj.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Okay, let's just start with this. You having fun on this job?
Well, it depends on the day. Well, actually, it depends on the hour.
Quickly, I know there's no such thing as a normal day for you, but just what's your schedule?
Oh, my goodness.
Like today, what did you do this morning? What are you doing this afternoon and in the evening?
Oh, goodness. I get up sometimes 6, 7 in the morning. I immediately get on the phone, drink my coffee, get on my Peloton. I'm like huffing and puffing on phone calls, meeting with people back to back, reading my notes, getting prepared, and starting my day with it could be anything. It could be a press conference, it could be a meeting, it could be this, it could be a lunch, it's so many different things and any given day. And what I try to do, no matter what is going on, is to make sure I get enough sleep, I drink enough water, and I at least take care of myself so I can have the right mindset to do this job.
At the end of the day, certainly there are a lot of challenges that you face. Any big city mayor does. How do you stay positive? At the end of the day, when you're about to go to bed, do you think about something and review the day? How do you stay positive or just let everything get at you?
I don't watch the news.
I know a few news guys.
I stay off of social media. I try to protect my mental health because, it's sometimes because what I noticed, I remember one night, because I would regularly watch the news at night, and one night I was watching the news and every story was really awful, and it just made me feel really bad, and I thought, I don't know if I could do this to myself. And part of what I try to do at night is read. I love audiobooks, meditate, and try to bring the temperature down. But as soon as I hit that pillow, it's a done deal. Yeah. Yes. Sleep is the best thing to do at night.
What's the most rewarding part of this job? And then the flip side of that, what's the most frustrating part of this job?
Yeah. Well, the most rewarding part of the job is when you're able to get something accomplished. When you're able to, run into somebody who says, I get a lot of complaints, of course, because I'm the mayor. Everyone wants to unload everything on me, which is a part of my job, and I accept that. But that one person who walks up and say, Mayor, I used to be homeless, but I've been housed for a year, and I'm cooking my Thanksgiving dinner for the first time ever. Thank you. Or someone who says, my kid made the honor roll. You were at the event. We're so proud of him, and he's been doing really good, and he looks at you as an example. And it's those kinds of stories and that kind of reinforcement that bring me a lot of joy because, it's been a hard time in San Francisco, and we've been really disconnected. And we talk about mental health and what people have been through, but I think the challenge is we're not addressing it in a way that helps us to realize the significance. We're just, okay, it's over, it's time to move on. It's like, what does moving on mean? And what is our new normal? Because we're not gonna be what we were before this pandemic, but we can be something better, and everything can't be about all the negativity and the divisiveness. We have to bring in joy. We have to bring in excitement, events, activities. San Francisco is a great and a fun city, and we need to make sure that we're introducing that into the conversations as well.
frustrating part of your job? The most
Frustrating. Let me see. The Board of Supervisors, the commissions, the accountability that I have, yet they are making a lot of the decisions that I have no choice but to implement. But I'm also being held accountable for them more. I mean, that's part of the frustration. Like, I'd love the opportunity to run San Francisco the same way I did during the pandemic, where I was able to be decisive. I didn't have to go through a lengthy process to get permission to do things that needed to be done to save and protect lives. And we're in a very similar situation with the number of overdose deaths, with the number of people who are, some of the crime and other issues, even though our crime numbers are lower than they've been in 10 years, not including the pandemic. But the ability to respond to things is important, rather than go through, for example, like a 9-month process to get permission from the Board of Supervisors to use surveillance technology to deal with the open-air drug dealers who are selling poison that is actually killing people, and more so than we had during the pandemic. And we shut the city and the world down for the pandemic, and so we need to respond with the same urgency. So that is probably one of the most frustrating things, is not being able to move as aggressively as I'd like to.
I sat on the stage several months ago with former Mayor Willie Brown, and he said there's no way he could be mayor. Mm-hmm. He said that with all the commissions, with the Board of Supervisors, it's handcuffing the mayor's office. Do you agree with that?
It is, and it's challenging, but it doesn't mean that you just throw up your hands. You either work around it, or you go to the voters, or you build coalitions of people that want to see real change. I mean, the politics have always been, very problematic and very intense. So that's a part of the environment. You just have to accept that part. But what you don't have to accept is, hey, we can't do this because this won't allow us to. It's like, well, what are the options? How can we go around that? It may take a year to do it, because you may have to go to the voters like we're doing with the propositions, but you don't let up. You have to fight for it. You have to push. And it's important to make sure that people understand why those problems exist and what the solutions are. And I think that's really the conversations that are happening now, is a lot of the solutions, which is why we're bringing forth a number of ballot initiatives to talk about solutions and the challenges that we're dealing with.
Historically, and you're a product of this city, so you know it, you've lived it. I'm trying to think back, Ed Lee, Willie Brown, Gavin Newsom, but I can't really think back those mayors, really back to Mayor Feinstein, that have faced such challenging times. I think the late 70s, early 80s in San Francisco when she was mayor, and then right now for you. Do you agree that those are the kind of the most challenging times in the city?
Well, I from what I read in the history books in the 70s, it was a challenging time. And I could speak to the 80s of growing up in public housing. It was like the crime, the homicides, the people who were being killed, and our homicide rate today is, nothing compared to what it used to be. Times were tough then, but I would say that, social media and the internet are playing a different role now more than ever. So it's like the crime is different, and in some cases lower, but the fact that people see it more is creating a feeling of concern and unsafety and challenges around that. So I think it's a different time, and we have different problems, but I know growing up how I heard gunshots regularly. That was a common thing. I went to funerals on a regular basis. Things were really bad, but things are challenging now, but they're just different. And when I say different, we had people who were on drugs, who were on crack and heroin and other things, but now fentanyl is killing people. So it's not like you, in the recovery community and the people that I talk to, like Mimi Silbert from Delancey Street and others, like the challenges of getting people clean and sober and back to the ability to live their lives on their own has been a lot more challenging because of the difference in the drugs that are out there on the streets. And in fact, so many people are dying as a result of it. So I think the pandemic, none of us could have thought a pandemic would have occurred. You know, the stuff around anti-Asian hate, Black Lives Matter, ceasefire. I mean, you go on and on. There have been like real complex, challenging problems. And at the end of the day, like, people expect the leader of the city to address them appropriately. And I feel that in many of those cases, and in the comments and the things that I've done and the investments I've made, that I've been a strong leader, a courageous leader in addressing those issues. And yes, I do think, you know, it's been a lot more challenging because I expected to have a little bit more fun on occasion, but, you know, that's the job, that's what I signed up for, and we got to keep it moving.
In your opinion, I'd love to hear this. How did we get here? This world-class city with a magical reputation around the world, and yet that's not the case.
Yeah.
Whether it's truth or whether it's just social media spreading this message, whatever the case is, we are struggling with homelessness, economic recovery, crime, whatever you want to say. How did we get here?
So I think part of how we got here has a lot to do with, you know, again, how social media is, and more so during the pandemic, people's own personal experiences on the streets of San Francisco. We, you know, like, San Francisco was one of the only cities in the Bay Area that saw even a reduction in our point in time count, 15% reduction in unsheltered homelessness and 3.5% overall, where other places saw it climb. And to put that in perspective, we've seen the numbers climb around homelessness every single point in time count, and this was the first time we saw a reduction, but people still feel, you know, very frustrated over homelessness in San Francisco. And to just kind of add some data points here to give that perspective, we've helped since 2018, since I become mayor, we've helped over 15,000 people exit homelessness. We've helped over 5,000 people out of encampments and places on the streets. We've increased our shelter capacity by 66%. We've increased permanently supportive housing units by over 50%. So the work is still being done, but we're seeing just a tiny dent, which is part of the problem. The desire is to see it completely go away. And it's not just about homelessness anymore nowadays. It's about open air drug use and drug dealing, which needs to be handled completely differently. I think how we got here is, before the pandemic, we had a line out the door of people who wanted to build office space, because San Francisco was a place everyone wanted to be. It's like San Francisco, venture capitalists, all the work. 5-year waiting list for building office space because there are limits on the number of square footage that you can build on an annual basis. And now we have about a 31% vacancy rate because COVID and work from home has changed. You know, some of the challenges around safety have been, you know, very much problematic. And I think that the attacks on San Francisco have been, you know, not just San Francisco, but it's like viral videos about the Bay Area have been attributed to San Francisco. I think there's a combination of things where San Francisco just got beat down constantly with a lot of the narrative, with a lot of the things that are going on. But the biggest challenge has been the change in a lot of our policies on a state and local level that have made it more difficult for us to be as aggressive as we need to in enforcing laws, dealing with these challenges. But I do believe, as challenging as things have been, and as much as that narrative was put out there, and the expectation that after a pandemic we would all of a sudden go back to where we were, now people are starting to see, you know, all of the cloud and the smoke and cloud is clearing, and now folks are saying, wait a minute, San Francisco is where we need to be. This is where the AI capital of the world is. This is where all these great things are happening, innovation, and we want to be a part of it. But we don't just want to be downtown. We want to be in neighborhoods where, I mean, we have over 80 AI startups, and many of them are choosing neighborhoods like Hayes Valley, and they're choosing Mission Bay. And that means we have to start thinking differently about our city and where we propose opportunities, especially when we're talking about downtown.
You can talk about statistics and say, hey, crime has dropped, or this is happening, but at some point, whether it's San Francisco residents, voters, or just people around the Bay Area who consider San Francisco as their home also. There's a level of, okay, you can talk about stats, but I can still get my car broken into, or I still see homeless on the streets. How do you get out of that situation?
Yeah, and I think that what's interesting, Raj, and I've been seeing it with a number of the various house parties and meetings and things that I'm going to, I think that in every single instance, people just want to talk about crime and homelessness. And I have been surprised that the conversations that I am having now are about EV charging stations. They're about the city hiring process, the ability and the challenges around planning to get a deck on my home. I mean, like how sometimes frustrating and dysfunctional city government is in delivering for what they think is important. And it's shifting a tad bit in light of some of the significant changes that we've been making. And I think people are starting to notice the difference. And that's really why we want to make sure that with the ballot measures we're proposing that we continue that momentum. We are doing more with less. We're getting a lot of help and a lot of support. And I'm really excited about what we've been able to accomplish. And I do understand that people think, well, we want it all to be gone, right? But we need to take a moment and reflect and celebrate our progress, because this progress was not achieved as easily, as people might think it was.
Excuse me, do voters have the patience to hear that? Or is it just, I want to get my home fixed, or I want to get the streets cleared and my car not broken into?
Well,
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But when I'm at the ballot box, what comes to my mind?
Yeah, well, I can't speak for the voters. The voters are going to have to speak for themselves, but I think every person is going to have their own individual feeling about their own situation, because, there are some people who are like, thank you, Mayor, and we know this is tough, and we know how hard you work. We see the change. I'm getting a lot of different things, and then it's, you know what, I'm not supporting this because this is not okay, and I don't see a change, and there's a problem in front of my store, and my store was broken into, and so on and so forth. So I think it's going to depend on each person's individual experience in San Francisco, but I will say I'm really grateful that, things are starting to change because, so many people in San Francisco, many of our workforce and folks who are working hard every day, especially, with the state and federal law enforcement agencies, we are finally getting a lot more help, a lot more support to make a real difference. And my hope is that that difference starts to continue and people start to feel differently and more excited about San Francisco.
This kind of cuts into the DNA of San Francisco. Can this city thrive under liberal progressive leadership, or does it need to have a more conservative approach?
I am just not the biggest fan of, because people talk about San Francisco politics and they say liberals, progressives, moderates, conservative. It depends on the situation. It has to be about the policy. And then there's a perception that you either have to be one way completely and you have to stand by, whatever it is you believe, or a complete different way. And I think that's unfair. Crime is one where, and just to give you the perspective of growing up in the Black community, because first of all, the Black community is not monolithic. They're not one thing or another. But at the same time, I know from my perspective and my experience, I was afraid. I was afraid in some instances, and I wanted the police to protect us. But I also didn't want the police to target people unfairly. So I wanted that balance. And to say that, we want to completely get rid of the police and we want to completely eliminate their ability to do their jobs responsibly is not something I subscribe to. So I think that, depending on the subject matter or the issue, there's more conservative or moderate or liberal views on any given day. And I think that the sad reality is how it seems people are constantly, especially in the political world, trying to say you belong to one camp or the other, rather than how do we continue to work together on the issues that matter. And I'll give you a perfect example. Supervisor Hillary Ronen we have been working very well together on some really great things involving small businesses with first year free, where we give small businesses, we waive the fees for the first year to get more businesses open. Over 5,000 applications with 3,600 new businesses and neighborhoods that have opened. We work together on the fencing issue in the Mission and the place where you see all these people, they set up shop and they're selling a bunch of stolen goods. Under state law, we cannot use police to directly enforce. And she has been working with me and working with the state legislatures to try and make some adjustments to that law so that we can use our officers to enforce. So I think that, again, when we work together, no matter, what our differences are, what our beliefs are, we can accomplish a lot.
There's two props. We'll get to them in a moment, Prop E and Prop F, that are emblematic of a lot of the issues you're talking about, of what you can and cannot do to improve the city. Before we get to that, the latest poll came out, and this is all about politics, right? This is right up your alley, of the mayoral race. Mm-hmm. And it has Mark Farrell, number one for a small group they asked, London Breed, and Daniel Lurie. How do you digest polls on an election year?
Well, polls are important because, they're reaching out to actual voters to ask a number of questions, but, sometimes people skew the questions in the way that they want. But I take those into consideration to, of course, get at the meat of where the challenges are and how I, as a mayor, need to address the challenges that some of these people believe that I'm not addressing. And that's my goal, is to use polls like this as not a way to feel defeated or beat, but as an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to make sure that we, between now and Election Day, are able to change people's minds about how they might be feeling about me and the city.
Mark Farrell said, I just talked to him, I think, last week, and he said, if we take an aggressive stance from the mayor's office, we can clear the tent encampments. Now, candidates,
again?
Mark Farrell.
Who's been where?
So
for the last couple of years?
As candidates, you can say a lot of these things. Tell me, is that possible?
Well, here's the thing. People say a lot of things. Like, we can instantly clear tent encampments. And I think you reported on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal when we were at a point where we could not even move people. We're in a different situation where we have clarity on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal. So we can move people only if we offer them shelter, which is what we do. We have always led with services, and it's one of the reasons why on Van Ness Avenue and places that used to have a lot of encampments, why we're able to be as aggressive as we have been in getting people indoors and getting them off the street rather than shuffling them from this place to that place to this place. But the fact is, they have certain rights, and there's a Supreme Court decision that's being discussed right now, and it may overturn some of these challenges that we have where we should be able to enforce sit-lie. We should be able to enforce some of the laws that have been approved by the voters of San Francisco, but right now, unfortunately, not all of them can be enforced, and there is no way that our city workforce is going to be able to go out there and violate the law in order to move encampments. But at the same time, over 5,000 of those encampments that have been, people in those encampments have been moved out of these encampments off the streets. We used to see under the freeway large encampments. We used to see in certain parts of the city and exits and entrances, there used to be encampments, bigger encampments more in the city. There are still some in the city, but we've been working really hard to get people indoors, in treatment, and get them the help and the support they need. And the pandemic, we had to exit all of our shelters because, of outbreaks with COVID and other things, but we've gradually been able to move people indoors and deal with a lot of those problems. Easier said than done, and if it could be done, it would have been done already. It is something that every mayor candidate talks about. They talk about, I'm going to end homelessness, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And then when you start, even I was like, I'm going to tackle this problem. And yes, we've been able to help over 15,000 people exit homelessness on the streets of San Francisco. But we have never had one point in time count where we've had, it's always been about 8,000 with about half of that on the streets of San Francisco. We've never even had a point in time count with 15,000 people. So what does that say? it is something that we have to deal with differently. It can't just be about offering services, offering support. It's homeward bound and getting people back to, you know, families and friends in other places that they're coming from. It's, you know, Proposition F, where we're saying if you want money from the city, you need to be in treatment. It's about making sure that all of these services that we're providing, that we're also pushing for accountability and not just allowing anything to go. People will say what you want to hear, but at the end of the day, we are trying to do what's necessary, which has made a lot of people very uncomfortable. It's made people uncomfortable that I was willing to arrest not just drug dealers, but drug users. It's made people uncomfortable with the ballot measures that we're proposing because, again, the goal is, it's like, look, we want to help you. We're a compassionate city, and we will do all we can to help you, but we cannot just let anything go because of whatever reasons people believe we should allow this to exist on the streets of San Francisco.
How do you fire back, whether it's Mark Farrell or whoever you're running against, to say, hey, that's really not within your jurisdiction, or at least within your powers? Do you wait for a mayoral debate, or how do you get back to this point?
So I wouldn't say that it's not within your powers as much as, you know, it's more complicated, right? So once we got clarity from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal, because the criticism was all of a sudden the streets are clean for AIPAC, but the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal clarification that says, if I say, hey, Raj, I have a place for you, and you say, no, I don't want it, but technically I offered you a place so you are no longer involuntarily homeless. And what that means is, in the past, before the clarification, we had to walk away. We couldn't do anything. Now we can say, well, you know what? We have under another lawsuit, we have to bag and tag your stuff. That's a whole process. We have to document stuff. It's a whole thing. And we can move you from the area. We can't ask you to leave the area. We can't force you into our program or our treatment, but we can clear the streets. We can clean the streets, and that continues to be the struggle because the people who are like mostly on the streets, I mean, I'll give you a perfect example, up by the DMV. We have had 100 interactions with most of those people where the DMV is. Fell and Oak and Broderick in that area. We've cleaned and cleared and moved, and that has been really tough because we can't force people. When we'll see what happens with the overturning of this, the Grants Pass decision at the Supreme Court in June, but until then, we have no other way to force people off the streets in San Francisco. They move, we can force them off to move, and we clean the sidewalks, and they just move across the street another, but we need to be able to compel people into support and into treatment, and we need the ability to enforce sit-lie, no sleeping on the sidewalks. We need the tools in order to make sure that we can be more aggressive.
Is that going to happen, you think, in the next 12 months?
It could. I mean, this is a very conservative Supreme Court, so the likelihood that it could happen, and that will, as much as, again, we lead with compassion, we have to be, especially with people that we constantly are engaged with, we need the tools to be able to force them indoors, especially when we have a place for them to go.
Two big props here in San Francisco. Prop E essentially gives more power to SFPD, the police department here. It amends or knocks down, wherever your point of view is here, oversight, accountability, and transparency. The ACLU opposes this. Why are you for it?
Proposition
E.
Yes.
Prop E.
So Proposition E, I actually put on the ballot.
Correct.
And I put on the ballot after, some of the, and I'll start with the small businesses. So there have been a number of break-ins all over the city of many of our small businesses. And in a couple of cases, because some of these small businesses have camera surveillance technology, and you see on the technology, the break-in going on, I guess the alarm being triggered, the police are coming, they're pulling up. In one case, they pulled up as the person is coming out of the location, jumping into their car, and took off, and then the police stayed there. And so people were like, this is not an uncommon thing. It happened in North Beach, it happened in the Richmond, it has happened in the middle of the night in different neighborhoods of San Francisco. And the frustration that people have had is why isn't the police doing anything? It's the middle of the night. And our pursuit policy is such that unless it's a violent felony, our police department cannot pursue. And so in those particular cases, they can't. And that has been my frustration with, I have always supported reforms to our police department. I led on reforms as a member of the Board of Supervisors, but we need to, some of these have gone too far. And giving our police officers the ability to pursue when safe to do so, because they're not stupid, they know how to do their jobs, giving them the ability to do it when safe to do so is what this ballot measure says, but also providing 21st century technology. When people call 911, there are cities that have technology where a drone can show up for a particular call, and you get eyes instantly on a situation to know, oh, this person's going through whatever, we need to send a paramedic, we need to send this, we need to send that. I love the idea of having that drone technology, or even when it's not safe to pursue a suspect, then that's where the drones can come in. And so drone technology, surveillance technology, and when I talk about surveillance technology, part of what we went through this 9-month process to get the board to approve our ability to tap into and get permission from private property owners to use their camera systems to do surveillance technology. We made 64 arrests just in the 6-month period, including 2 homicide suspects and a lot of drug dealers in the Tenderloin community. And our goal is to be able to use technology to combat crime, to deal with the challenges that people want to see us deal with, to cut down on the bureaucratic paperwork that takes our police officers off the street, and to make sure that there is a clear understanding with the public of what a process, of what a policy actually will mean for their public safety. Because what happens in San Francisco, the police commission will make a decision, and the police department, the officers will say, well, how do we fold that into our already existing policies? And things become a little bit more confusing. But more importantly, the public is like, why can't they? Or why isn't this happening? Or why isn't that happening? And we need to make sure that we make it clear to the public when we're making significant changes, the policies that are going to impact public safety.
Is it frustrating for you? Can you have it both ways when you talk within the community, hey, we want a safe city, but yet the rules are our police department can't do certain things? We ran that clip on NBC. You didn't watch because you don't watch TV. But
I don't watch the news at night.
But the optics of that was we see the police officer there, and they're just standing, in their car, and the bad guys are getting away.
Yeah.
And that's what gets people frustrated,
yes.
whether you live in the city limits or around the Bay Area, because we all share the city in a great way. Can you have it both ways? We want a progressive, make sure we have our rights, but then again, it's too much. We're crossing the line here.
Well, and going back to the pursuits, because I know that there are a lot of people who are always concerned, about innocent bystanders when it comes to pursuits. Now, there was a particular situation in the middle of the day, car break-ins on Alamo Square. The police got there, the guy took off, and the police did not pursue. It was appropriate for the police not to pursue because it was, the streets were packed with people. Anything could have happened, but the drone technology could have been used in that particular case. Whereas the thing that happened at North Beach and the Richmond and some of these other places where these small businesses were broken into, it's like 2, 3, 4 in the morning. There aren't people on the streets, and the ability to pursue a suspect in that case should be able to happen. And I think that the goal is not to, just completely abandon our police reforms. The goal is to make adjustments to help address some of the challenges that we're seeing as a result of these policies.
Are you optimistic the Prop E will pass?
I'm hopeful that I am hopeful that Prop E will pass, and I think it will be a strong message. Honestly, to the police commission in particular, that they really need to listen to the public and not focus on ideology, but focus on safety. And to be clear, it's, this city has been a leader on progressive police reforms. We've made significant change, and as a result, we've time and distance and officer-involved shootings and all of those things that some other places are still dealing with. San Francisco is not having that kind of problem, but we're getting to a point where things are becoming too nitpicky, and it's, even with the Department of Police Accountability, it's, using profanity or not wearing your seatbelt. And to me, it's like that. Those are HR related issues that should be addressed by the department and their captains and other things. And, when you talk about an officer involved shooting or police misconduct, that's a whole nother ballgame. And that's really what people wanted to see change in the department. But I do believe that in some cases we've gone too far, which is why I put Proposition E on the ballot.
Prop F, another prop that I believe you introduced, correct?
Yes.
It would mandate drug screenings for welfare recipients. So I'm getting money from the city, and if I do get money, I have to be drug screened, is
Yes.
what you're saying. And if you fail that test, you're entered into a free treatment program. If you don't go, then you get no more cash.
Yes.
What's the pushback? Who are you getting the pushback from?
Well, the pushback seems to be coming from, again, I think the ACLU and folks who feel as if forced treatment is problematic and not a solution. But I would like to talk about where this came from and who actually supports it. Because again, my upbringing, I have a lot of people that I've known for many, many years who suffer from addiction, who were those drug addicts in the Tenderloin, who fortunately in some cases are now clean and sober and are in the Tenderloin every day trying to help people and trying to help get people into treatment. And so my work with them has led to this ballot measure because they wanted me to take a stronger stance. And after numerous conversations, we've funded abstinence-based programs. We have buprenorphine, which is also very helpful to address the cravings. We have been providing resources and services around treatment. And one of the things that they said is we need to make sure that getting help is easier than getting drugs, and getting drugs is too easy. And we want the city to be more aggressive. And that's where this came from, is to say, for those who are getting money, if you want to continue to get that money, you need to be in treatment. And treatment is not just about a bed. It's, about maybe one of our 13 clinics and getting help and support there. It's trying to introduce accountability to the equation in a way that's going to help save somebody's life.
Yeah.
And that's what this is about. And it's coming from former addicts. It's coming from people who are in recovery, including people like Mimi Silbert, who supports this kind of approach. And we need to start, like folks are like, you need more of this, there are all kinds of excuses for what we need to do or what will or won't work. But what I do know, in light of the significance of this issue, we need to be as aggressive as we can to address it, and that's what Proposition F represents.
There's about 5,200 San Francisco residents that receive monthly payments from the city. About a third of the 5,200 have a drug problem. So that's probably some of the genesis that you're trying to get at here.
Yeah, and the third of those people are the ones that self-identify. Yeah. They're the ones who say, yes, I have a problem, right? And I'll tell you a couple of things to dispel some of the myths. Number one, people are saying, well, what if they can't get into a program? We're not going to just take away their money unless we're able to commit them into a program. And again, the program can be an outpatient program or any other program for that matter. You're going to require testing. And now if the program that they choose requires testing, then yes, they have to follow the guidelines of the program. But our screening approach does not require testing. It does not require sobriety. The whole point is accountability. The other thing that comes up is we're going to take away people their housing opportunities. Now, most of these people, we're probably already paying for their housing, and we have the ability under state law to pay, like, for example, if there's someone who's living independently, we can use these resources to directly pay for housing and not necessarily give them money directly. And so this is not about trying to create a bigger problem with homelessness, but this is, in all honesty, honesty to start cutting off the supply and where people think San Francisco is the place to come to because it's so easy to get drugs. I don't want people to think, well, I'll go to San Francisco because, because then we're bearing also the brunt of the challenges with overdose deaths and other things, and I am trying to cut off the supply chain here, and that's a part of why Proposition F is so important.
E and F, if they pass, is that going to be a political win for you going into the election in November?
I think that it'll be a big win for the city. And as I have always said, when I ran for this office, I mean, people have the right to run. People have the right to support who they want to support. What I am always going to focus on is doing the best job that I can do for San Francisco, and also, doing what I had hoped other people when I was growing up in San Francisco would have done for me, and that is to not let the politics dictate what you do, but to be a responsible leader of San Francisco in whatever capacity. And, my hope is that people start to see and feel a difference. But I also realize, it's politics, it's an election year, and those are the kinds of things that go with the territory. But I think regardless, these are going to be big wins for San Francisco.
You're a fighter. You like to say that yourself. Is this going to be a nice a fight for the next several months?
Oh yeah, it's going to be a fight. And again, I want to bring it back to, I still have a job to do, right? So I still have a job to do, and my goal is to try and spend my time, the majority of my time, doing everything I can to do this job and to hopefully do it well enough that people start to see and feel a difference and start to feel better about San Francisco. That's my goal. But I don't shy away from a fight. I'm open to that. I think this also provides an opportunity for me to make sure that I am communicating exactly what I am doing. I'm communicating exactly the progress we've made or the challenges that we may have or what have you, because it opens the door for people, to see and to decide. Because, I go back to the pandemic, I go back to everything that we've been going through for the past couple of years. It's been hard. It's been a hard job. It's been frustrating. I don't know if I would have felt like I would have wanted to do this during a pandemic or with some of the challenges that existed. And the sad reality is there are people running now that were just MIA, nowhere to be found during our toughest time in San Francisco, but yet they know what to do when they could have offered some help and some support during a time where it was really hard. And I think that people will get a chance to see and make their own decisions based on what they believe they want to see happen with San Francisco. And I'm really excited about what that entails and looking forward to the opportunity to get on stage and to battle it out, and may the best lady win.
We have some great audience questions. I'll get to that in a moment. Can you, is it even worth your time to go try to convince a voter that just says, forget it, I don't want the current mayor just because of what's happened in the city, so I just want some sort of alternative? Do you even engage in those conversations?
Well, I think that, when I first got elected, one of the things I made clear is I don't just represent the people who elected me. I represent the people of San Francisco. And, it's not about the vote. It's like I still have to be available to deal with the challenges of San Francisco. I still have to work with people that I know are openly opposing me or against me. They're San Franciscans. Sure. Whether it's the business leaders, whether it's different communities, what have you. The board of supervisors, and I still work with people, because at the end of the day, if we can just find what we agree on or what we're trying to solve for or whatever that issue is, then I'm okay with coming to the table no matter what. It can't just be about who's going to support you. It has to be about running the city, and separately campaigning is a different story, but running the city, I don't deviate from my desires to continue to build bridges and good working relationships, like I'm surprisingly doing with some of the members of the Board of Supervisors who, I've had a lot of challenges with.
Okay, some audience questions now. We've got some really good ones. Mayor Breed, San Francisco is a world-class city. I think we all know that. What other world-class cities have you traveled to recently and learned from to improve San Francisco?
Well, I will say I don't get to travel very much. Like when I leave, if I leave San Francisco for any reason, which I haven't been able to, I have to leave a member of the Board of Supervisors in charge. And at one point, I only had one option, so I don't get out much. But a couple years back when we were trying to drill up some support and tourism and other things, we did travel to, I think we went to Amsterdam at one point. And one of the things I loved about being there is I loved they had a lot of people, but they had this great transportation network with bikes, with buses, with cars, and it was chaotic, but it seemed to work. And so I want to make sure that San Francisco, as we start to build more housing, as we start thinking about how our city becomes, of course, more affordable, that we're thinking about our transportation network, and also New York is another example of downtown. New York, many years ago after 9/11, they decided that they were going to do something a little bit different rather than the 9 to 5 financial district, and become more of a neighborhood and more of a place to live. And that's where we are with San Francisco's downtown. Downtown poses so many incredible opportunities. It's why, I put the information out there about a soccer arena. There's the possibility of, some of you might have remembered Sutro Baths, like there are European day bath spas that are interested in the downtown, and also housing, and being able to convert some of these buildings, not all of them, I know that they don't meet the criteria necessarily, but we have identified at least 8 buildings that meet the criteria where they could be converted to housing. And also, right now, biotech and the world of technology is booming. We have a 31% office vacancy rate, but we have a 3.7% vacancy rate for lab space. And so the ability to convert some of these buildings that have the taller ceiling height for those purposes could be possible. And thinking of downtown as something more than the 9 to 5 financial district, thinking of downtown as a place of opportunity, and this is what I'm trying to get especially the business community to focus on, is how do we all come together and really work together rather than the one-offs, and build on, a vision of downtown that will make it the envy of the world, because we have all the makings for what's possible, but we have to be open-minded about the transition, which also includes, the city getting out of the way and making changes to our policies, which I've already done. One of the first policies that I changed was to allow for conversions. The inclusionary numbers we decreased because we wanted to incentivize people to transition those buildings into housing, and also getting rid of certain requirements for new development, like open space. And there's no way in a building that's already built that we're going to be able to meet the requirements. So why are we having the conversation about it? So a lot of what we have to do with the city, because in the past, we never had to work for it.
Yeah.
We didn't have to work for office space and business. We never had to work for tourism. We never had to work for conventions. And now we got to work for it. So it's not, charge everyone all the taxes in the world and, add this layer of bureaucracy, and everyone has to jump through these hurdles for 20 years in order to build one building. It's like, no, we have to adjust our thinking, our mindset. And now everything is about incentivizing and getting people excited about these new opportunities. That's why Prop C is on the ballot, which basically says if you transfer or you build housing or you in an existing building, we will waive the transfer tax. It's another way to incentivize people to want to do something different with their properties in downtown, because downtown has got to become become something different. And that is what I'm pushing for. It's why I'm making all kinds of changes and providing all kinds of incentives, because I know we can get there, and it can be an exciting thing for us.
We have a Prop C question, actually, from the audience. Under Prop C, would developers be required to allocate a percentage to affordable housing units, or would it be 100% luxury housing?
So it would be the same rules would apply. And just to be clear, we lowered our inclusionary numbers, and in fact, the Warfield is converting its office space to housing as a result of that, which I'm excited about. But it would still have the same inclusionary requirements based on the number of units that are being converted. So it fits within the same scope of the laws.
This goes back to something you also mentioned from the audience. It seems that many of the folks using drugs and receiving benefits in San Francisco are not from San Francisco. Why should someone be able to ride a bus from Iowa to San Francisco or somewhere else to get free benefits and services?
Well, I will say that that's kind of been my experience too, being out there, having conversations, finding out, and I don't have any control over who comes to San Francisco. But part of why I want to make it more challenging to get benefits is because, of what has happened in terms of the explosion of drug use and drug dealing, and also how much money the city spends on a lot of resources to help people, and how oftentimes we are carrying the burden for a lot of other places. And so I want to make sure that San Francisco doesn't continue that reputation of being known for that place for drugs, for support services and all those other things. But I can't control, how people come here or not, but we do have Homeward Bound, where we try to reconnect people with their relatives to get them back home. And we have some other initiatives that we try to work on to help deal with that, but that's definitely
challenging.
It's challenging, but that's why we can't save the world in San Francisco. So we need to start dialing it back.
Another question from the audience. I feel like you are the grown-up in the room most of the time.
That's my new favorite person.
What is the single most persuasive thing that we can say to advocate for your re-election?
Whew.
Good question.
Oh, that's a good question. Single most thing? Oh, that's a hard one. I think in light of what's happening in public safety, I think probably one of the most important, I think it goes back to the pandemic and having emergency authority to do more. And despite the challenges that exist now, still I'm able to have some of the lowest crime numbers we've seen in the past 10 years in San Francisco, not including 2020 during the global pandemic. So we are seeing change, we're seeing progress. I think pointing to some of the data could potentially help. I'm not sure. It might be something different for different people, but I think what's going to happen with my reelection is I am going to have those hard conversations with people. I think I'm going to have to get into the rooms. I'm going to have to do the debates and have the conversations. I mean, there are people who are definitely going to feel how they feel, but I do think it's important to have conversations like this so that we can really get to the heart of some of these issues. And, I don't know how simple of it is an answer other than I'm the grown-up in the room, like you said.
Few more minutes here. San Francisco is a Republican punching bag, perpetuating a false reality to the American people. People cringe when they learn that I'm from San Francisco. How do you stop or counter that perception? A lot of it is perception, but there is a lot of reality as well.
Well, I think, San Francisco is because, this city has produced stars in the Democratic Party like, Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Nancy Pelosi, people who, Feinstein, people who have been trailblazers in the party. And are, they come out of San Francisco and they take off. And, Gavin, we all know, is people are talking about he can be the next president. And, all these conversations are happening. And I think that, sadly, there are a lot of folks who are using San Francisco in that way, especially because Fox News is really always on the hunt here in San Francisco for that story that they can take and run with. And it's unfortunate and it's unfair. But I will say what I'm grateful for is that when we hosted APEC in San Francisco, when we hosted Dreamforce, when we've hosted events, and in fact, you may not believe this, but I have a lot of elected leaders who are Republicans who come to San Francisco. I don't tell anybody that they're here. But what's happening, people are coming to San Francisco. They're like, it's not what everyone's saying. It's not, it's like, wait, this exists where I'm from. It's actually, worse. Like, what are people talking about? So those conversations are starting to happen. And I think, the perception is finally catching up, or the headlines are finally catching up to the perception. I mean, The Economist just did a big story. The Wall Street Journal and other folks are talking about the great comeback in San Francisco this and San Francisco that. And, it's finally starting to, the headlines and the media are starting to pay attention. And I think the challenge with some of these stories is oftentimes they're written by people who don't live here, who are journalists who don't have the San Francisco experience, and they try to find through the various videos and things they see on social media a way to kind of attack San Francisco. But I think that things are turning around, and so now you're starting to have San Franciscans who are saying, wait a minute, and putting up stuff on social media about this great event or their great experience or this fun or this activity, even though the problems have not gone away. Things are changing and people are starting to feel it. In that same poll that talked about me, 70% of those people who were polled said they feel safe in their neighborhoods in San Francisco, which included neighborhoods all over the city. So I think that, it's still an uphill battle to get change around what people have been saying about San Francisco, and we have to continue. We can't let up. Even if we see things are changing, the numbers are getting better, this again goes back to these propositions, because the need to continue down that path is so important, and it requires making those kinds of changes. So we're always going to be that, but my hope is that we demonstrate by all the great things we have going on here who we actually are.
Things can turn around quickly, I believe.
Yes.
What more can the city do to help the families, children, and small businesses in the Tenderloin and feel safe and thrive?
Yes.
That's a really tough question.
Yes, and that is a tough question, and most, Tenderloin has been one of the hardest things I've had to deal with, because it's been really emotional for me, hearing from these families and having the conversations about the environment that they're living in. And I think, the day has gotten a lot better compared to what it used to be, but the night is still very much problematic. And what this means is, and this is part of why I have these ballot measures, is it has a lot to do with the Tenderloin, and it has a lot to do with the families in the Tenderloin. We have a lot of immigrant families, we have a lot of business owners, we have folks I grew up with who used to struggle with addiction, who have challenges, and they live in the Tenderloin, and they want safety. And so we need to deliver it with them. And I think some of the surveillance technology that we've been using in the Tenderloin that has helped us make those 64 arrests have been really helpful. And we need to continue down that path. And the people there, they want it, but I will say that they're not, my experience is, they're not as loud as most people, because they're also living in fear. Yeah. And it's not fair for them to have to live like that. So that's why I no matter what happens with elections or anything else, I won't stop doing what I need to do to try and protect the people of the Tenderloin, especially the families, the seniors, the kids, by using surveillance technology and other tools in order to combat the open-air drug dealing and the drug using. We've arrested over 2,000 people. And you know what? The U.S. Attorney's Office is helping us, the Drug Enforcement Agency is helping us, and the California Highway Patrol, and I'm taking all the hits for bringing in these resources, but in the absence of our police department's ability to do certain things, because under the police commission things have changed, we are using other resources to help combat the problems of the Tenderloin. And every person who's a part of the California Highway Patrol that's been helping with San Francisco, they all volunteered for this assignment. And so we're going to continue down those means, and we know that Prop E will be a huge help in the efforts that we need to do there.
You have the right team in place in terms of your DA, Brooke Jenkins, and your police chief, Bill Scott?
Oh, let me tell you something. First of all, our DA has been great. She's been doing an absolutely wonderful job. She's gotten drug convictions, homicide convictions, retail theft convictions, so much so that people are saying, wait a minute, I don't want to go through this court process. I will plead out. She's holding people accountable a lot differently than people have been held accountable before. It's been great. Our police chief has had a lot of challenges. And when I say a lot of challenges, crime, we know, has been very much problematic. But the work that we have been doing with the additional help and the support that we have gotten from the different agencies that I've mentioned, they've been a game changer. The $17 million that we got for retail theft, that we're using for our district attorney's office and for our officers to make arrests in those big crews that run into these different stores to combat retail theft, it's been a game changer. Fake car operations, game changer. Like, all the work that the department has been doing has been contributing to the success in how we're combating crime. And Police Chief Bill Scott has been really a leader around reforms. He's been a leader on a lot of the challenges that have existed, and he has kept us focused on following the law. You know, and that's an important part of it, because a lot of the policies for the department has changed, and it's required us to do things differently. And I want to just say something, since you brought up the police chief and the DA. You know, I know some people are like, I'll fire the police chief. You know, trust me, the police chief is tired and ready to go. But at the same time, he's focused on the work, and he cares about this city, and he supports San Francisco. But you know what will happen if he leaves? This commission will be responsible for sending 3 names to the mayor. This is not a commission that I want 3 names from. We'll be just like Oakland. We'll be just like Oakland, sitting on a acting police chief because of the kinds of people that they will send my way. So it's easy to say you're going to do something, but it's harder to do it. And that's why this dysfunctional system of commissions, being able to have the ability, like the mayor, any mayor should have the ability to hire and fire department heads, not commissions that are appointed. You know, and especially my commissioners who are appointed, but by me, the 4 that I appoint, but then approved by the Board of Supervisors. And so I've had police commissioners consistently rejected, very competent, capable, well-respected people to serve on this body, rejected by the Board of Supervisors. So it's easier said than done, but the mayor is always held accountable for all of these decisions. And look, I signed up for the job, so I take full responsibility. But at the end of the day, what I did during the pandemic, when I was able to exercise kind of executive authority in an appropriate way, is exactly the way that this city should be running on a regular basis. And if we want substantive change, then we need to make adjustments to the charter and to a lot of these layered rules that impede any executive's ability to not run this city like it should be run, like a company, in making decisions. So I wanted to put that out there so that folks can understand it's more complicated than what people say in a little soundbite.
Yeah, which is very true. And you talk about Oakland, they've been without a full-time police chief for more than a year now.
Yes.
Because of that police commission. And I speak with the mayor there quite often. The person who said they wanted to fire the police chief here was one of your opponents, Mark Farrell, who said the first thing he would do was fire Police Chief Bill Scott. So that's the genesis of that.
And he said it during Black History Month, too. He could have waited till March.
As we wrap up, by the way, we had great questions from the audience. We really appreciate it. As we wrap up, what have you learned in the several years you've been in the mayor's office now about yourself? Not about the city, about yourself.
I think I've learned how resilient I am. Because I will tell you, the pandemic, I keep going back to that because it was lonely. It was really lonely. I was running the city, I was doing the work, I was making these hard decisions. I learned that I was really resilient, but I also learned the value of what my grandmother taught me. And the reason people go back to, oh, you were the first major, mayor in the major city to shut down and stuff. And that came from like the strength of my grandmother, who was always a protector. And so I felt like, oh my goodness, I have to protect the people of San Francisco. So as much as it was hard to say no to the Warriors in playing another game and no to all these people who wanted me to say yes, to let them just do this one event one time, all I can think about was, what if? And what happens if, people aren't able to get a respirator on my watch? And so throughout that process, I think it made me definitely a stronger leader, a more decisive leader, and also more enthusiastic than ever before for a re-election, because I want to actually enjoy. I want to enjoy this new wave of enthusiasm and excitement because of how hard things have been, and I really want to usher in hopefulness and optimism and excitement about San Francisco, because I know we're tired of folks, trying to criticize us, trying to kick us when we're down, and it's time for us to bring in the joy, the excitement, the fact that we survived this pandemic, and now it's time for San Francisco to thrive and to transform. And what I do is I remind us of who we are. I mean, we created the television in San Francisco. The iPhone was introduced. The cable car was created, like innovative things, AI capital of the world, the Clap-On and the Chia Pet. I mean, we do it all in San Francisco. And so it's so important to stop letting other people try to define who we are. It's time for us to take back that narrative and make sure that people understand that this is a resilient city where we take freeways on Embarcadero after earthquake, tear it down, and create this beautiful walkway, runway, a place where people can enjoy. This is the city where, as we start to see our recovery, we're going to take downtown and turn it into possibly a soccer stadium, housing, a new neighborhood with office and all these new innovative industries that want to be a part of San Francisco. So what I want to be able to do is make sure we remember that. And what I learned about myself is when I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and make it happen, there's nothing that can stop me.
Mayor Breed, thank you. In closing, I just want to say your passion and dedication to the city is very admirable. Appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Raj.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you.
Mayor London Breed.
Thank you.
One bit of housekeeping. If you want to continue to support the Commonwealth Club's efforts to making virtual and in-person programming possible, please visit commonwealthclub.org. I'm Raj Mathai. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.